Hey everyone, welcome to the ToddTalk Leadership Podcast. I am Todd Marshall Hernsberger. I'm the host of this podcast. I'm also the founder and CEO of Leadwell Solutions. And this is a podcast where we talk about all things leadership, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And today I am super excited to have on a special guest that I'm so interested in talking about the subject matter because I have been learning about it recently over the last month, and that is on the subject of AI, artificial intelligence. And I have what I would consider, he may not consider it, an AI expert, and he marries the topics of AI with the subject of leadership. And so this is what I'm really wanting to hone on today to see how leaders can use AI effectively to become better leaders. And so I'm happy to have you. Your name is Gísli Ólafsson, and you are the technology executive. You are a former parliamentarian and crisis leader who has spent 3 decades at the intersection of technology, institutions, and pressure. I want to know more about that word pressure here momentarily. He now advises senior leaders at the point where artificial intelligence meets the institutions they are accountable for and writes and speaks from the same vantage. He is the author of 3 books. One is called The Crisis Leader, The Motivated Leader, and the AI Fluent Leader, a trilogy written over 15 years on leadership under pressure. He founded Gridland Consulting in 2026 this year as the vehicle for his advisory practice and writes regularly for senior executives, boards, and institutional audiences on AI, leadership, and resilience. He lives in Iceland and works with clients across Europe and North America, as well as international institutions based in Geneva, New York, and Washington. Thank you so much to come on here. I know we kind of found each other by accident. I was looking for leadership experts to come on my podcast to talk on the subject of leadership, and somehow I got an email from you in which we found out in the long run the email never came from you. We don't know how the email came to me, but it was promoting this book, The AI Fluent Leader. And it was at the exact moment I was looking to find something on this subject. And so I'm going to consider this a God connection. And so I'm glad to have you on, Gisli.
Exactly. Well, glad to be here, Todd.
Well, let's get on this subject matter because I know there are a lot of people that will be listening to this podcast wanting to know and gather all this information on how to connect AI with leadership. You wrote the book, The AI Fluent Leader. Kind of tell us about why you wrote the book and what the overall gist of the book is about.
Yeah, so the thing was that most books, and actually a lot of the discussion going on online around AI has to do with the technology itself. And if you talk to companies, they ask, so which one of the products should I use? Should I use OpenAI? Should I use Claude? Should I use Copilot from Microsoft? So they always go for the technology question. But being someone who's had leadership, as a focus for a couple of decades now, I felt that there was a need to actually have a book that looked at this from the point of leadership and how we actually, as leaders, can use AI more effectively and how we adapt our organizations to leverage AI more effectively. So looking at it from that point of view rather than the tech point of view.
I know AI is changing the world. I remember back in the early 90s, if I remember correctly, internet was just coming out, becoming very popular. I know it was used well before it became public with the military. They were using the internet back then. Then it became public in the 90s. I was just a young adult, fresh out of high school when this was all coming out. And I remember how the internet was literally changing the world and how we connect and communicate with the world and gather information. Now, AI has taken that whole part of gathering information and creating information to a whole different level, in my opinion, times 10. See, I mean, I'm totally amazed at AI. I do use AI today. I don't use it for everything. I use it more for research and creating graphics and My son created my website using AI for my Lead Well Solutions business, and I'm totally blown away. I thought internet was big, but this is much bigger. How do you see AI in general, not dealing with leadership, but in general, how do you see AI literally changing the world and even the good and the bad of it?
Yeah, it's like with every kind of revolution we've seen, like when we got electricity, we found ways to use it for good. We actually also found ways to use it for bad. Actually, we execute people using electricity, for example. So all technology brings some good and some bad with it. When we saw electricity come, which is, over 100 years ago, it affected factories mainly and people working in factories. When we saw the internet come, all of a sudden information became available at our fingertips. We had to find that information. We had to dig for it, and we had to find, if I go and I Google leadership, I may find 1,000 or 10,000 pages on that. And we will learn how to type in better, search queries and maybe find something and then read it. What we're seeing happening now with AI is actually because of the availability of all of that information and because of the availability of better computing power, all of a sudden we can actually have technology start to do what kind of simulates us thinking, simulates us writing things and synthesizing things out of what is there. So today I could sit down and ask AI to write a book. And it may not be perfect, but it's not that different from what you and I would write in many ways. And that is something that, the technologies that I was talking about before, the internet and the electricity, it never attacked kind of the white collar worker. It was always the blue collar. And it's all of a sudden now it's starting to threaten some of the jobs that required us to do, or we required people to do. Take an example, junior legal professionals. We would hire in junior people into the legal business because we needed somebody who could go and find court cases and examples and all of that, do all the manual work. Yeah, it became easier once they could kind of Google it, but it was still a lot of manual work to find the exact things. Now you can say, find me an example of a case where so and so and so happened, and it actually gathers that information and writes it up for you. So what we're going to see over the next few years is, a lot of the work we do changes. We go from doing a lot of manual or labor intensive work into more learning how to ask the systems the right things. And I've been asked things like, is this going to mean that we lose a lot of jobs? The truth is actually that in many cases, it actually creates different jobs, different tasks that we do. A great example is IKEA. IKEA, we've all, had the wonderful experience of trying to put something together and then maybe finding out there was a screw missing or something. And you would call, if that happened, you would call customer support at IKEA. And they would kind of answer and give you, feedback. They actually, over a year ago, replaced all of their frontline customer assistance with AI, with an AI chatbot that then, would send you that screw that was missing. Or like my one of my grandsons actually got this one little piece of Lego that was missing. But that is all done through, an AI chatbot now. IKEA did not fire the 8,500 customer reps that had been answering that. No, they reskilled them to actually take on higher level questions such as, how do I plan a kitchen, or how do I plan a bathroom? And that actually created for IKEA in the US $1.3 billion of new sales.
Wow.
We're going to see changes, but it depends on whether the organizations go the direction of IKEA, which is, let's create new opportunities rather than just say, hey, let's fire, 8,500 people at one go. But I've also been asked, would this affect how much we work? And actually, it's quite interesting that about 100 years ago, during the Industrial Revolution, there was a person who wrote a paper saying we should work 8 hours a day, spend 8 hours a day with the family, and sleep 8 hours a day. And he was ridiculed and laughed at because at that time, most people worked 16-hour days. So what do we know? Maybe we'll work 4 hour days a
Wow.
few years from
Love
now and spend more time with family, spend more time with friends, spend more times doing our hobbies or whatever we are passionate about, giving back to society. So there are options in this, and they may sound ridiculous saying let's work 4 hour days, but just remember that guy from 100 years ago who's ridiculed for saying 8 hours a day. So I think we're going to see quite a lot of changes, but if we steer them correctly, they're going to be good changes.
So, in your book, AI Fluent Leader, you make a statement there that is very interesting. And it says that AI does not replace leaders, it exposes them. And I think that may be a tagline underneath the book title. What do you mean by this?
What I mean is that AI makes the quality of the leadership more visible. If the leader has clarity, for example, AI can help scale that clarity. But if a leader is confused, AI will actually scale the confusion. And if the organization has trust, then AI can actually accelerate learning and better decisions. But if the organization lacks that trust, AI can create fear, shadow use, and resistance. So AI doesn't remove the need for leadership, it actually removes the places that bad leadership can hide. And seen leaders who are not good at defining the real problems that the organization is trying to solve. And very often when that happens with regards to AI, we see a lot of small experiments in using AI and no real focus on how it can truly help the organization. So it's all about AI helps scale whatever you have. And if you have bad leadership, that will scale. And I know you wrote a book about what leadership can fail at or be dysfunctional. If you have a dysfunctional leader, you're going to see that even more using AI. So that's why I say that AI exposes leaders. It kind of reveals whether they have strategic clarity, moral courage, trust, and ability to create the conditions where people can use these powerful tools in a wise manner.
I've always heard the phrase that when somebody is given a lot of money, it reveals more of who they are, of how they manage and spend that money. And this is the same subject matter. This is the same talking point
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
AI really is going to expose leaders for who they really are at the core, whether they're dysfunctional or toxic or healthy, doesn't matter the spectrum. It truly is going to reveal more about who they are. So when a leader starts using AI, what's some of the biggest mistakes you see them making in using AI? Can leaders make mistakes? We've already identified that it would make a leader worse or better.
Yeah. I think what I see often as the biggest mistake is treating AI as a tool issue instead of a leadership issue. A lot of leaders come to me and ask, which platform should we buy? How do we get everybody to use ChatGPT? And they're decent questions per se, but they shouldn't be the first questions. The first questions that leaders should ask themselves is what problems are we trying to solve that actually matter?
Hmm.
Because without that, we just get endless pilots, experiments, and demos. People get excited about AI, but the organization itself doesn't change. And you get a lot of activity without actually delivering any value. I also often see that leaders are quick at delegating all of this AI stuff to the technology team. The technology team matters, but AI changes actually how we work how we make decisions. It can change our culture, our trust, and so on. And those are leadership things. Those are not tech things. So my advice for leaders is always start with a business problem, then define the human decision and decide where AI can help. Don't start with a tool. And I have very often see, I have a lot of friends in the tech sector who are working for tech companies, and they knock on the doors of all the different organizations, and they always start with, "Oh, we have this great thing, let us show you how to use Copilot within your Outlook or something." And yeah, it gets a little bit of trial and error experimentation there, but nobody's really looking at how do we change the overall way of working through the use of AI.
Is it possible for AI? Let's say there's a problem we're trying to solve as an organization, and the person who's working with the AI puts a prompt in that they already know what they want the end result to be. They just want AI to show them how to get to that end result. Would AI have the capacity to look at the overall circumstance of the problem that they're trying to solve and say and be intelligent enough to tell that person who's given them the prompt, hey, you're wanting me to get to the process, the step by steps of getting to this solution, but in my opinion, your solution that you're wanting me to work towards is not really the solution that you need. Is it smart enough to know the difference of saying, hey, you want me to create this solution, but yet that's not what you need? Is it smart enough
Yeah.
to identify that and redirect a leader or the prompter to the solution that AI feels like should be the correct way to lead towards a solution?
So there's a saying, garbage in, garbage out. And that applies to AI as well, meaning that if you give it bad prompts, you're going to get bad results. And one of the things that you try to do when you work with AI is actually train it up on, what are good things? What are good values even? How do you work? And I can give you an example because I created an AI agent to help me with my consulting business. I trained it with some of the best practices from the consulting world of how to do things. And then I said, okay, I'm publishing my book. And I kind of asked it, should I send out lots of cold emails to potential customers? And it said, no, 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 no. Remember, we talked about your customers are executives at companies. If you start sending out cold emails, you're going to lose their trust. So it was very interesting how when my mind kind of went, oh, maybe I should do this. Maybe I should have TikTok video. If I suggested that, but I had trained it and I had told it who my customers are, it knew how to approach those people rather than going with a flow of saying, and it came kind of when I think I told it, can I create like short TikTok videos or something? And it came back like, I could help you with that, but remember that we are focusing on executives. They do not use TikTok. So it was like, go find podcasts. That was a better solution than do that. So yes, if you give it good enough background around who you are, about your business, and so on, and you tell it to actually be critical, and that's one thing to do. I saw somewhere that AI is 49% more likely to agree with you on things than a human would be, but you can actually control that. You can say, when I say something to you, always come with a critical answer or give me, criticism if you feel that is not correct or not
Hmm.
aligned with who I am. So if you give it good input, it will actually be critical and do good things. And same thing applies in, if you like I did, I spent, a few evenings chatting with a digital twin of myself that I had created. And it actually had learned about my values and my beliefs and what matters to me in the world. And once I had done that, it actually aligns the outputs in such a way that whenever if I ask it to do something that would go against my beliefs or go against my values, it actually says, I could do that, but remember so and so and so.
So it brings
So
correction.
it can,
But you have to tell
but
it to
it,
bring correction, right? You literally have to tell that AI to bring corrections to you. Other than that, it may agree with you and just do what you tell it
yeah.
to say if you don't
And
give it direct orders.
yeah, and it's important to remember that AI is trained on data. AI is trained on information that's available on the internet. And not all information on the internet is necessarily good, meaning that, for example, it's been said that a lot of the tools use things like Reddit as a way to train. And on Reddit, you can ask questions and people can answer. And not all the answers are actually quite good, but if enough people say those things, then AI starts to believe that's the best answer. So one way of looking at it is think of AI as an extremely smart generalist. It knows a lot of things about a lot of things, but it's actually not an expert in any of the specific areas. And sometimes it may actually, like I mentioned, the Reddit part, it may actually be skewed or biased in the wrong way compared to what's actually correct. So, for example, if you ask any of the AI tools for medical advice, you're not necessarily getting the best answer. But we saw a few weeks or a week ago or two, we saw actually Microsoft and the Mayo Clinic announce that they were going to be doing a collaboration where they're going to train AI on actual medical information, on the best practices of diagnosis and so on. So there we're going to get a model, an AI model that's going to be an expert in medical things rather than being a generalist. And I don't know if when you go to a doctor, I don't know if you want to go to a generalist or a specialist, with your questions. I don't think you would want to go to a generalist trained on Reddit. Not that I have anything against Reddit, but you get a lot of suggestions there that are not the correct answers. Yeah, if you give it good enough information, and that's what in my AI work, I always try to find examples of good things and tell it, use this as basis for your knowledge, for your work.
So you mentioned that you are training an AI agent, and especially in your coaching and consulting business that you have. And of course, I have the same thing with Leadwell Solutions, and there are other leaders that are watching or will watch this podcast that, they may not be coaches or consultants, but they lead an organization in
Mhm.
some form or fashion. What does that look like when you say an AI agent and you training it? What does that look like? Because I want to know how to train an AI agent to help me. Is there a lot of pre-prompts that you have to do and information you have to download and give it in order to set it up? Or what's that process look like of training an AI agent for your business?
Yeah, so you can think of an AI agent as being that specialist that I mentioned. So it's something that's truly trained on a particular topic. And the nice thing is actually there's a lot of people creating these agents, and there's actually a lot of people just sharing them for free with the community. So you don't have to necessarily start by creating one yourself. You can actually download them and start playing with them. I just saw one yesterday that, somebody had captured 21 steps of the McKinsey consulting approach into a free, agent that you could download, just as an example. But what you normally do when you create an agent is you start by collecting all the data or all the information you can about that particular topic. So, for example, I wanted to create an agent that helped me take a novel manuscript that I've been writing. In Iceland, we jokingly say that half the population is authors. We're trying to talk about the fact that we have the old Icelandic sagas written in the 1300s, so we must be a very literary world. So everybody writes novels or stories. So I'd written this novel, but I wanted to kind of get a kind of like an editor to read it over, but I wasn't really ready to send it to some other person. So I wanted to say, okay, can I send it to my AI and get it to give me feedback? But I was like, yeah, but the data that it's trained on is actually it's a generalist thing. I wanted a proper kind of editor. So what I did was I bought a few books about copy editing, about writing books like Stephen King's on writing and things like that. And I took those books because nowadays when you buy the books, you can actually get the PDF or the EPUB file. I took those and I converted them into what's known as a markdown file, which there's a tool out there to do that called Mark It Down from Microsoft. And it actually creates just a simple text file out of the original PDF file. And then I took those books that I'd converted and I said to in this case, Claude, cowork, I said, read these books, capture all the best practices, capture all the models, the frameworks, all of these things into a knowledge base. So it kind of went on and went through the books. And like 20 minutes later, I had this knowledge base, which is also a markdown file, but it's kind of captured the essence out of all the other books and kind of structured them up. And then I said to Claude, okay, using that knowledge base, create an agent for me that can give me feedback on a novel. And it went in and it, again, 10 minutes, it came back and it said, okay, now you have one. It's called Book Doctor, and you can run it against your story. So I tried, okay, Book Doctor, and it gave us an attachment, my manuscript, and I pressed enter and I wondered, what will I get out? And it actually came back with an extremely detailed analysis of my story. It pointed out discrepancies, like the last name of one of the key persons in the book I changed somehow halfway through, and I also at the same time had changed that they were not Danish, they were Norwegian. So, I wrote that book over 4 years, so I guess I'd forgotten that. But it came back with these things, and it came back with like a list of things. Here are things you should fix before you publish this book. So it's a step-by-step thing. First is finding whatever background information you can get. Very often that's PDF files or the books, EPUBs. Second is just simplifying that into text files in the Markdown, and then create a knowledge base, and then create an agent. So four-step process, which I've now done for a number of things. So consulting, writing software. After the book doctor told me my book was actually semi-decent, I thought to myself, can I have an agent create a TV series script out of this? And it actually did that and output the script
Wow.
in the format that the TV producers like to see it. And I was like, man, this is powerful. What I thought was interesting also was it actually didn't take my book and just turned the timeline over to 6 episodes or 8 or whatever it was. It actually started playing with time. So it actually started the TV series in a different place than the book starts. And then it started doing kind of flashbacks, which you see a lot of in movies, right, and TV shows right now. You're not getting the exact linear timeline anymore. You're kind of going back in time, jumping back and forth. And it actually suggested doing that in order to keep the suspense level of the TV series high. Again, whether I ever take that book and make it into a TV series, I have no clue. But it was a fun experiment in seeing what
Wow.
AI could do.
This is totally amazing, me hearing all of this. And again, me experiencing AI personally. So what you're saying to create an agent, just to kind of just put it in a Cliff Notes form, you really have to feed it the correct data that you want, such as books and the right websites or whatever, and then have it become an expert or a specialty in that field, and you are literally dumping the information in it, and that's what it uses as an agent to help you with whatever you're doing. Is that right?
Exactly. And that's what you do also with, like, you and I have written books. One of the things I did was to feed the AI with my books and say, hey, this is how I write. So when I ask it to write something nowadays, I can say, write this article and make it sound like me. So it actually does the tone and voice and everything, like me. So if I use a lot of particular ways of speaking or particular ways of writing, it'll actually write the text like that, not just the generic text that everybody else does.
Yeah, I have learned that personally to where I have trained my AI to write in my tone or my voice, and it actually labeled it the Hernsberger voice. So every time
Exactly.
it writes something for me, it'll ask me, "Do you want me to write this in the Hernsberger voice or another tone?" And sometimes I have to tell it, "Okay, I want you to write it in an academic tone and not the
Yeah.
Hernsberger voice because my Hernsberger voice." When I write is more conversational versus academic tone is again very academic, very formal, and all of that. And I'm in college. And so again, it's helping me do a lot of research and all this. So I do understand the whole principle of having it use your voice of how you write so that it's authentic to you and what you would
Yeah.
have found if you would have written it yourself. Amazing technology.
It is. It is. And you mentioned something that I want to, your viewers to think about it also is like you mentioned that it asked you, do you want it in your voice? One of the things I have in almost at the end of almost every prompt that I send to AI is ask me any clarifying questions if you need. So,
More
and now
specific,
you
we ask the prompts, the better that it's going to give us output.
exactly. Yeah, if you're doing something and it didn't know whether to write it in your voice or not, that was only one of maybe two or three decision points that it needed for actually writing it. Another one might be how long should the article be or how long something be. So by just adding that, ask me any clarifying questions at the end of the prompt, it'll actually get your feedback on more decision points before it starts actually writing.
There's always going to be some leaders that are old school. Technology, of course, they may use technology in the organizations, but now that AI out, it's new. And you have some old school leaders that may say, I don't want to use AI. I want to keep doing what I've been doing. It's not broken, so why fix it? And they end up over time, what I would call be left in the dust at some point because AI really does speed up of how an
Mhm.
organization can get things done. But if you have an old school leader who wants to just do it the old school way, do you think that they'll be left out in the dust per se here in the near future, if not already?
Yeah, one thing we're already seeing is that organizations that are slow at looking at what AI can do are in some cases being, replaced by a small startup that created a new app or new thing, new way of doing things, doing the same thing in a much less costly way because they're using AI to do like all the customer service and all these things. So you end up quickly replacing the business. We all saw what happened 27, 8 years ago when the internet came out and we saw Amazon and we saw all the bookstores disappear for a while. Now they're coming back. A lot of people thought e-commerce was going to replace brick and mortar. I think we're going to see the same kind of thing. People are going to create solutions that may put some of the brick and mortar out of business, but then it becomes a question of what other value is your brick and mortar or your e-commerce site offering that the AI isn't. One of the things that we see is like, the bookstores are coming back because they were about something other than just getting a book. They were about meeting people, having coffee. They were about browsing things. You walk past an aisle with a book that you go like, oh, that's a cool book. Even with all the all the algorithms for showing you things, you would not have found that particular book. And that's part of what people want. I was talking, I went to my barber to get my beard shaped for this podcast, actually for my vacation as well, which starts tomorrow. And here's a barber running a barber shop that has actually written software for himself using AI. You can now make appointments and all these kind of things. You can do that using a website and an app that he wrote. And he's not a computer programmer. He's a barber. And all of a sudden, that is actually threatening in a way, the established app that everybody here in Iceland, for example, is using for booking all kinds of things like this and making reservations. And he can offer more value out of that because it allows me to book things and say in advance what I want and all these kind of things that he's been asking the booking agents to put in place, but they were working very slowly. So that's one thing. I don't think we're going to see, the barber work itself be replaced. But what I mean by this is that there are also businesses where you can totally replace some of the human aspects of it with with AI agents that work 24/7. They never go on vacation. They never get sick. They don't need paternity leaves or maternity leaves. They don't go on strike. If you can create that and they
An
cost you
ideal
one
employee.
tenth, yeah, exactly, and they cost you 1/10 of what a person would
Yes.
cost. We're seeing startups in Silicon Valley where maybe one or two people are working, and then there's like 20 developers, but those developers are actually AI agents that are writing code 24/7. And all of a sudden, the cost of doing a startup has gone down drastically because you don't, you do need to pay for the AI, but it's so much less than paying for an actual developer. And we've kind of said it's a bit ironic that the sector which is seeing maybe the first wave of layoffs because of AI is actually the tech sector. But we're going to see it also happening in like banking, legal, and other places where you don't need a human. You can
Yeah.
need somebody who acts like one, but isn't one.
Yeah, and I know AI can have you create tasks or timelines or reminders, and it will remind you. My son got me hooked on a new AI app that is, I don't know how old it is, but I would assume it's fairly new, but I've never heard of it until he told me, and I'll tell the world because it's really a unique AI app, and it's called Tomo, Tomo, and it's a texting app. And so my AI texts me, we text back and forth with each other on my phone, and I have it set up to remind me via text when I have to take certain medications because certain medications have to be taken so many hours apart from each other. I have it hooked up to my calendar so it reminds me of upcoming events in advance and all of that. And it even asks general questions like, how's your day going? After this
Yeah,
after this Zoom call is over with, it's already told me it's going to check up on me and how the Zoom call went. And when I probably hang
cool.
up in a little bit when this time has passed, it's going to ask me automatically, "Hey, how did your Zoom call go with Gisli? Tell me a little bit about it." And I may reply back and it may ask me a few questions. And it is very interactive, but it's through text messaging.
Yeah,
And I have learned to love that because I'm on my phone more than I'm on my computer. And it's just amazing how even technology is getting better and better, even in the texting format with Tomo. Have
yeah.
you seen anything even more extraordinary than this? And it's probably going
Y-
to get more extraordinary.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're seeing a lot of usage in AI is kind of having these personal assistants. Back in the, 50 years ago or so, all managers or all leaders would have secretaries that would type things for them and remind them you have a meeting in Mr. Hernsberger, you have a meeting in 20 minutes. It's with this person and so on. And then somehow in the last decade or two, we became a lot more linear. We flatter organizations and so on. You might become a manager, but you didn't get an assistant or a secretary to help you with that. But now you can actually have that kind of virtual assistant. And interestingly enough, a few years ago, that was actually a big business to get somebody sitting in a much cheaper country to be your virtual assistant. You would pay them, $1 per hour or something, or and you could do that because it's very cheap. Now you have that as your AI companion. I took mine a little bit further than just saying, hey, you got these things today and go and look and do those. And it actually, I took some of the best practices from time management and kind of life management, and it starts asking me, what are the things you want to focus on over the next month? What are the things you want to focus on over the next year? And then as the days and the weeks pass, it kind of goes like, hey, you said you wanted to spend more time with your sons. Maybe you should book something into your calendar this week where you spend more time with them. So, the more you give it about your life's purposes, what matters to you in life, the better it can kind of align to giving you kind of the push at the right time to say, hey, it's been a week since you called your parents last time. Hey, make a call. Those kind of things that once you add that layer on top of just the daily reminders and so on, it very interesting thing. And one of the things I also asked mine to do was to prompt me in the evenings and say, give me a quick rundown of how your day was. What mattered today? What were some of the wins you had? Kind of this kind of journaling, being grateful for things and so on. And likewise, it asks me in the morning, what's your energy level like today? So, and then it actually creates a diagram of how my energy levels have been
Wow.
throughout the week and month. So I really like the fact that it can work not just as an assistant, but also as a coach, also as somebody who helps make sure you focus on what matters to you, because
So good.
life is more than just our work. And it's important that we focus on those things as well.
Okay, last question before we end this podcast. If you could give one piece of advice to a leader who is trying to navigate this new AI world and navigate it wisely, what would that one advice be?
My advice would be start with the human being, not the technology. The core question is not what can AI do? The deeper question is more, what does this do to the person, the community, and even the moral responsibility that you have as a leader? We talk a lot about servant leadership, and AI can actually be a very powerful servant for us, but it should never become the master.
Oh, that's
It
good.
should help us to think and prepare and analyze and communicate and serve. But it should never weaken us, weaken our compassion, weaken our attention, our humility, or willingness to take the responsibility. So, I mean, use AI, but don't let it form your consciousness. Let it sharpen your work, not replace you. Most importantly, in my opinion, it's let it increase your capacity to serve, because that's what matters. We're here, on this earth to do good. And like I said, you can use technology for good and you can use technology for bad. Those of us who have this focus of playing a role in making good things happen, let's leverage this tool for making that happen. And let's let it amplify, just like it can amplify our mistakes. Let it amplify our ability to serve, our ability to reach, our ability to truly touch other people.
That is so good. Thank you, Gisli, for being with me. How can people get a hold of you? How can they get a hold of your books called The Crisis Leader, The Motivated Leader, and of course, the AI Fluent Leader, which we talked on today? How can people get a hold of you, these books, everything? Give us all the details of how to reach out to you.
So I have a website called Gislio, so my first name and then first letter of my last name, gislio.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn. and feel free to reach out to me there. I'm happy to chat with anybody who interested in learning how to use AI for good in this world.
And you can be a keynote speaker and come in and help organizations with this whole connection of the organization and AI. That would be something you'd be open to as well.
Definitely, you can see what kind of services I provide on my website. Feel free to reach out there. And if you want to figure out how to lead in the time of AI, that's what I focus on.
Great. What about your books? Can they get your books on Amazon and or any of the major book platforms or go through your website?
So Amazon, they can find them through the links to Amazon on my website, but they're also just available if you Google the Crisis Leader, which was my first one. Yeah, it's a bit difficult when you have that blurring thing.
Yeah.
And the Motivated Leader, and I'm still waiting for the AI Fluent Leader to arrive here. They all have my name in big letters and big names, so you can easily pick them out when you see them online.
Good to have you. Thank you so much. And I want to have you back to talk on these other subject matters of your other books. But for those of you who want to know more information about me and my organization that I created called Leadwell Solutions, you can simply go to my website at leadwellsolutions.us. Again, that's leadwellsolutions.us. You can also grab a copy of my book on there called The Dysfunctional Leader, The Pathology of Flawed Leadership. And I'm also writing my second book, which is not on there yet, obviously, but you can pick up the Dysfunctional Leader book if you would like to do that through that. And of course, you can learn all about my coaching and consulting services, along with strategy building tools and leadership development and training. Again, thank you, Gisli. Appreciate you being on. And we'll see you all next time on the Todd Talk Leadership Podcast.
Thanks, Todd.